Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about social determinants of health in non-communicable diseases. I will focus my talk on cancer, and I will bring the North American perspective so that my counterpart brings the Colombian perspective. So there are some themes that I want to touch first. I want to talk about cancer in Canada to give you a sense of where we are at in with the issues on cancer. Then I will talk about an issue that displays a lot of the social determinants of health that is called cancer disparities. Then social examples of social, economic, and cultural determinants in cancer. And then I'll briefly talk about um, uh, how this impacts pollution and climate change. So the first thing that I want to talk about is cancer in Canada. So just a couple of figures to give you a sense of where we are at with cancer. First, this is very important. It is the number one cause of death since the 1990s or early 2000s. Uh, Cardiovascular disease was number one, and then cancer became the number one cause of death. So that's quite important. As you can see, that this about 90,000 Canadians will die from cancer in every year, and so it's a very big problem, and then a big health concern. And then, as you can see, 2 in 5 Canadians will develop cancer in their lifetime. So it's quite a big. Those are big numbers. Now, to give you a better sense of this, this is something that relates that I have summarized about the cancer incidence, so the number of new cases, and the cancer mortality, the number of deaths. And you can see that on the left and the right. So first, the numbers. So you can see that in terms of incidence, each day, almost 700 Canadians are diagnosed with cancer. Each day, and then each day of the year, and then each day, about 240 Canadians die of cancer. That's almost like if one airplane would fall off the sky every day. So then that's or more. So it's very dramatic. It's really far from ideal, and that's why we're studying this so carefully. So the first thing that I want to highlight that is probably very similar in the other countries is in terms of incidence here on the left side. You can see that the top cancers in males are prostate and lung and colorectal, while in women it is breast, lung, and colorectal. So as you can see, those are the top four, what we call the top four: prostate, breast, lung, and colorectal cancer. Those are the ones that have the highest incidence in Canada by far in terms of new cases. And in terms of mortality, what you can see here on the right side, lung is number one in both men and women. So of those top four, lung cancer is the most deadly. And then after that, then you can see in men colorectal and prostate, and pancreas is somewhere there. And then in women, after lung, breast, colorectal, and pancreas. So those are probably similar to many other countries, but it is important to highlight where we are at. And those frequencies have not changed throughout the years very much. The final thing that I want to mention before going to the social determinants of health is the cancer types, and that's why we're studying. This is like a complicated graph, so I don't want to get lost with this, but it's the cancer types by age groups, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. So this is a period of between 2015 and 2019. And I will highlight, so here you can see the different age groups. So 0 to 14, so all the children, 15 to 29, the young adults, 30 to 49, and so on. And then you can see, I'll give you two examples. Breast cancer. So breast cancer, that is this pink square. You can see that always breast cancer was always in the 50s and over, right? So it is not surprising here to see that in the age of 50 to 69, 70 to 84, and so on, breast cancer has a significant proportion of this. What has been very surprising is that now we can see breast cancer in 30 to 49, and we can also see breast cancer even in younger women in their 20s. And that's a very big concern because we are seeing a lot more breast cancer since the 90s, up to the point that mammographies have now been recommended lower at ages lower than 50, and that was unthinkable in the 70s and 80s. Also, the other example is colorectal cancer. Colorectal is this yellow square, and of course, colorectal was more common in older adults. But then now you can see again that colorectal cancer is present in the 30s and even 20s, and that's really remarkable. So we are trying to look at what are the causes of this? Why are these trends so worrisome? And also, it's also present in childhood cancer. We see an increase in childhood cancer, and I will not show that. So there are very worrisome trends that allow us then to justify our need to look at risk factors, and social determinants of health is one of those. Okay, so now I will to go straight into the topic. That is the social, economic, and cultural determinants of cancer. And that in cancer research is called cancer health disparities. Because as you will see in the definition uh, by the National Cancer Institute of the US and the American Association for Cancer Research, cancer health disparities are adverse, and that's a key word, adverse differences between certain population groups in cancer measures, such as incidence, prevalence, morbidity, mortality, survivorship, and quality of life. So what this implies first is that these are differences that are adverse, so that set up some populations negatively, with negative effects on all in any of these parameters. And the second one is what it calls certain population groups. So those are vulnerable populations. They are populations that are distinguished by displaying these adverse differences. And then, so what we try to do is to try to identify those differences, try to go after the cause, like identify what is the cause of those disparities, and try to, of course, to eliminate those differences, eliminate that disparity. This has been a topic that has increased in importance and in study in cancer research in the last 30 years, I would say. So, and this is overall the perspective that we have right now. And of course, I will not talk about all of this, but you get a sense that cancer disparities can be caused by many factors. So here in green, I have put many of the factors that are, some of which are modifiable and some of which are non-modifiable. So it is very clear, for example, that geographical location of the physical environment and the physical environment are things that we many times do not have a choice, but then they are the ones that determine. So, for example, in Ontario, there are some areas of the province in which there is more cancer, a higher cancer incidence than in others. And then those are, so people that are born and live there are born with that uh, risk factor. Now, sometimes that relates to genetics, but sometimes to ethnic factors, to race determinants, and so on. But then there are these modifiable ones that we concentrate on as cancer prevention strategies that are the behavioral and lifestyle and environmental factors. Of course, that are very important now, and I will highlight a bit later. Of course, there are socioeconomic status is the one that we're talking about today with more emphasis. And finally, I want to emphasize something that is obvious, is that of course the cancer disparities also relate to healthcare, right? So the access to screening, access to treatment, and then that are very important in Canada and in other parts of the world. Okay, so now some examples. So first, this is Elizabeth Ward and her group in 2004 highlighted this in was one of the first seminal papers that she determined that she defined that there were social, economic, and cultural factors that affected the prevention, early detection, diagnosis, treatment, post-treatment, quality of life, and survival. So the whole cancer continuum, and that will be a topic that I will explain in the next few slides. So one of them is the social determinants, and of course you can see the cancer continuum down here. And then what you can see is that these authors have defined structural determinants such as the social and political environment and the socioeconomic position as very important determinants of the cancer continuum. So you can see here gender, race, ethnicity, income, educational attainment, and occupation. That are all factors that have been studied. And on the other side, housing, for example, housing insecurity is like a very important thing because it affects, of course, not only the access to health and also, but also the financial status. And in this term, is called financial toxicity. So basically, when the finances really cause a lot of stress and hardship that affects many of these factors that are involved in cancer control. Now, one other example is childhood cancer. In childhood cancer, you can see, without going into all the details, there are socioeconomic factors, and then there are that affect the specific outcomes. For example, they affect the treatment, the outcomes of the treatment of children, the diagnostic delays. There are some children that do not have access, and then the cancer will be diagnosed very late. The adherence to treatments and to care, because sometimes they cannot financially or geographically or socially access um, cancer health systems. The tolerance to full dose chemo, for example, is an example in which nutrition is very important. Obviously, an undernourished population will not respond well to cancer treatments. And of course, the quality of care that is very affected by the access to health services. So this is just one example about how low socioeconomic status is associated with worse survival in children with cancer. Okay, this is something that was taken from a Latin American study, but it reflects in blue, there's the many countries of the world, and in green, Latin American countries. And what it shows is that the GDP is associated with cancer mortality. So the higher the income in the countries, the higher the GDP, then the lower the mortality. And you can see this as examples of lung cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. So there's a pattern that is very well known, and that of course it underscores like the importance uh, of the economy and of the income in people that have to do sometimes the unfortunate choice between uh, spending their income in their family and household or in their treatment. And of course, many times painfully, they favor the family and household, sacrificing their lives. Okay, the final examples that I want to show are in the US. There have been many studies of Black, Hispanic, and Asian neighborhoods, what they call studies on ethnic density. And I just want to highlight a couple of things. Uh, this is a systematic review, a review of the evidence, and it just shows each one of these dots implies papers that support that. So what you can see clearly is that cancer incidence, when you compare it in this kind of neighborhoods, is not necessarily there's evidence for and against an association between that and cancer incidence. So it's controversial in a sense. But what is not controversial is staging, the stage at which cancer is diagnosed, and it is clear that there's a positive association. So that basically in neighborhoods that are underserved, cancer is diagnosed a lot later. And of course, that relates also to cancer mortality. So cancer deaths in Black, Hispanic, and Asian neighborhoods are high. Now, the final mention that I want to make is about air pollution, about pollution and how climate change is something that we can see as an important concern. So, first of all, this is from 2018 and the Lancet Commission on Pollution and Health, and it is obvious, it is something that we know that air pollution and lung cancer are linked, and we see here that air pollution has been determined not only for lung cancer as an important uh, contribution to the deaths by lung cancer. Of course, there's other diseases that I will not go to, but I just want to highlight lung cancer as an example. That is the most obvious, right? But then after that, then what we can see is that we are concerned that air pollution increases with as we face this crisis, this climate crisis. And what you can see here is one example of this review, recent review, in which it just shows that fossil fuel infrastructure, just to give you an example, affects all, releases carcinogens to communities at every stage of the production, and to the point that it affects different areas of the cancer control continuum. So there's really a lot of studies right now about how climate change and cancer are interlinked. Of course, climate change is more obviously affected by disasters, climate-driven disasters. But then what we are concerned is that pollution is going to increase with the climate changes that we're seeing, and that this is just one example with the fossil fuel infrastructure. So that's it. That's my short talk. I'll be happy to answer any questions and look forward to the discussion. Bye bye.